Dude, I really like Movie Sonic. Not that I've ever said this on this channel at all, because I barely make videos on here. But Movie Sonic is one of my comfort movie franchises. I love the hell out of it. It's what truly got me into the Sonic games and franchise as a whole. I love those first two movies. I'm stupid excited for movie 3. I'm a big fan of this franchise. So I was pretty excited going into the Knuckles series and had faith that they were going to pull off a good spin-off side story for these movies. I really like Idris Elba's take on Knuckles. I like how the movie writers write Knuckles. You know, what can go wrong here? It was a big steaming pile of mid. And that's not to say I didn't like aspects of the Knuckles show. You know, I'm not going to be one of these people saying that it's one of the worst pieces of Sonic media ever, up there with 06 and Forces. And I'm also not going to be one of the people using this show being an L as a platform to do movie revisionism and act like the first two Sonic movies are these terrible stains on the Sonic franchise and not, you know, combined with Frontiers being pretty good, the things that saved the Sonic franchise's public perception. I just think that this Knuckles show missed the mark in a bunch of ways that I want to talk about today. And I want to start talking about this by saying that I actually really enjoyed the first 3 episodes of the Knuckles show. The opening scene recapping the events of the second Sonic movie with Our House by Madness playing is really cool. I think that's a really great song choice, and the scenes that they pick are edited really well and line up to the song well. Also, bringing back the motif of Sonic being a narrator from the first movie is really cool. I'm a big fan of that. Something that I find really funny about the first episode is that they have to give this bullshit explanation to why Tom isn't here. Because they could afford to get Brent Schwartz on, they could afford to get Idris Elba. Hell, they were able to get Kid Cudi on for this. But for whatever reason, James Marsden, big no-no. We gotta write his character out of the show for some reason. But yeah, these first few episodes about Knuckles linking up with Wade and going on this big bowling adventure thing, I think is really fun. Linking up Knuckles and Wade conceptually is genuinely great. Wade is the guy who knows a bunch about Earth, but as a warrior is absolutely useless, and Knuckles is the warrior who knows absolutely nothing about Earth. These two characters conceptually have a great dynamic, and in these first 3 episodes bounce off of each other excellently. I found them really entertaining. The issue is though, the dynamic only works when the character focus is balanced well. And while it's balanced well in these first 3 episodes, this balance is quickly thrown off of a cliff, which I will get to later. But in the first 3 episodes, I think it works really well. Seeing Wade and Knuckles slowly starting to connect more as Knuckles becomes more in touch with Earth's customs is really fun. And Wade's bumbling and slow improvement to becoming an actually competent person under Knuckles' watch is really satisfying character development. Wade is also just genuinely really funny in these first 3 episodes. I especially like the scene where he imagines a perfect rescue of Knuckles in his head only to catastrophically screw it up in the real world. It's funny stuff. Wade is a good character. An episode I really liked is the Shabbat dinner. The one where Knuckles goes to Wade's house and meets his mum. And yes, while it is true that this episode does introduce Wanda, who much like everyone else I absolutely hate, I still really enjoyed this episode. I think Knuckles and Wade's mother had an absolutely lovely dynamic. I just find the mum character to be really likable. You know, I just had a lot of fun with that character. I really liked the fight scene with her and Knuckles versus all of the assailants. Using the candles as a framing device, they just rotate the camera around as Knuckles and Wade's mum beats up criminals is so fun. Knuckles is also just really well written in this series as a whole, I'd argue. I think later on things get messy, especially in regards to his screen time, but the actual characterization stuff I think is good. Knuckles is a smart, strong, and headstrong individual, but due to being isolated from any other people for so long, and largely getting put into fish out of water situations, he can come across as very out of touch and clueless. The important distinction is that he is not a bumbling idiot. He is smart and he is capable. He just has to adjust to being able to interact with other people. And I think the show captures that character very well. I thought those first 3 episodes were great. They had a lot of heart. Knuckles and Wade were really fun in them. After finishing episode 3, I was so ready to smash out the rest of this show and then start defending it online. Then the other 3 episodes happened. And look, I'll be the first to defend episode 4 of the Knuckles series. I can completely get why Knuckles wasn't in this one. This episode was solely about Wade's echidna training, having to be able to prove that he can operate without the safety net that is Knuckles. So I can understand why Knuckles was not in this one. But then Knuckles kept getting sidelined over and over again in those final 2 episodes, getting to the point where it felt less like the Knuckles show and more like the Wade Whipple show. Which is a problem because 1, it says Knuckles on the poster, it's a Knuckles show, and 2, while I do like Wade Whipple a lot, he is not interesting enough to serve as the primary protagonist of a show. His previously B-plot became the main plot of the entire show, to the point where it started feeling like the writers just really wanted to make a show about Wade for whatever reason. and had a quota to have to include at least 45 seconds of Knuckles screen time in each episode. Those last 2 episodes were just a straight up Wade Whipple show with the occasional reminder that Knuckles exists. And I think that kinda sucks because the joint focus the 2 characters were getting in those first 3 episodes was so good. The Wade bowling stuff worked as well as it did when it was the B-plot. A secondary thing to spur on Knuckles' character arc about becoming more accustomed to Earth after his battle with Robotnik. It's just not interesting enough to suddenly take main plot status, and because of that, episodes 5 and 6 were just largely boring. And this leads into another issue I have. The finale of this miniseries was seriously whack. The true villain of the whole miniseries, the Buyer, is absolutely mind-numbingly boring. He has nothing in the way of an interesting dynamic with Knuckles. We know barely anything about him beyond the fact that he makes black market robots after Robotnik went crazy. He doesn't have the kind of screen presence that Jim Carrey's Robotnik, or hell, even Kid Cudi in this miniseries did. He's just an undercooked, poorly fleshed out, stupid villain, and I don't like that. Going into this series, I expected the Buyer to be a foil to Knuckles, a character who is completely out of touch with other people in a sadistic and cruel kind of way, so that he can be compared to Knuckles, who has more of a heart than just being a brutal warrior, in order to demonstrate his own character development throughout this series. Instead, he's just kind of there to attack Knuckles in a big robot at the end. The only real impression I have of him is that he has a really stupid defeat. There's this scene where Wade's family pulls up in this stupid little car and gives Wade a bunch of bowling balls to throw at the Buyer. There's so many windows in this scene where Wade and his family are just stood around faffing about talking, and the Buyer has plenty opportunity to just swoop in and kill Wade and Knuckles, but just doesn't. He just stands there like an RPG character waiting for his turn in the fight. It is so dumb. One of my favorite standout dumb moments from this final battle is this really sentimental moment where Wade tells Knuckles that he has a heart and he does fit in with humanity. And they show a bunch of flashbacks of Wade and Knuckles' adventures, but it's only from the first 3 episodes, because Knuckles gets absolutely nothing in those last 3, and even the people working on the show knew that. And also, this whole sentimental angle about Wade and Knuckles' connection doesn't work when it was sidelined for half of the show. In isolation, this is a really good scene, and in a show that fleshed out this dynamic better, it would have been a really satisfying bookend. But they just didn't do enough to sell this connection to me after the first 3 episodes. You can't completely sideline this dynamic out of the show for half of its runtime, then expect me to suddenly care about it again at the end. And then the show just ends, on a random freeze frame of Knuckles and Wade high-fiving. There's a short post-credit scene of Knuckles finding his favorite song and riding into the sunset, but it's not enough to compensate for that ending. And now, I look at this frame and I don't necessarily hate it, but it's just the ending happened out of nowhere. At the very least, you'd think there'd be some kind of moment where Knuckles goes back to Tom and Maddie's house and apologizes for what he did at the start. You know, for when he kidnapped their mailman and turned their house into a gladiatorial combat arena. Just something to bookend Knuckles' whole character arc of becoming more accustomed to Earth, but nope. It just ends so abruptly, and the series feels super incomplete because of that. Also, in the second episode, they establish Wade as a fugitive from the law, and they just never follow up on it. Sure, they have the whole bounty hunter thing in episode 4, but that doesn't change the fact that Wade is apparently a fugitive from the law, who the police have called a manhunt on.
His authorities have a manhunt out for a guy named Wade Whipple.
And after the bounty hunter stuff, that's just never addressed. Is Wade just screwed and on the run forever now, or did it get sorted out? What's the deal with that? We don't know, because the series just randomly ends before it can wrap up all of its plot threads. And yeah, those are my thoughts on Knuckles. A very messy series for sure, but one I think has a lot going for it, even if the second half was an absolutely monumental fumble. I did really enjoy the way Knuckles was written and characterized. I thought he was stupid entertaining when he actually showed up on screen. And I did really enjoy Wade Whipple in the first 4 episodes of the series. It's a shame the finale didn't stick the landing, but it is what it is. I definitely think Sonic fans are being a bit hyperbolic about this series. Don't get me wrong here, I'm not making excuses for this series, it is deeply flawed, but at the end of the day, it is just a spin-off side quest miniseries for a B-list streaming service. You know, it's not like this series is the future of the Sonic movie franchise, and it's not like it's going to be one of the most defining aspects of the entire Sonic franchise going forward. It is just a side quest. And I think that side quest is just kind of whatever. Really good first half, really boring and mediocre second half. Topped off by an absolutely out of nowhere ending that does a pretty bad job at wrapping up the series plot threads. It's a shame all of these good ideas were marred by such weird execution, but whatever. I'm still hyped for Sonic Movie 3.